All right, day 11. I'm going to switch to opening beers normal because Molly from the pound has been making me paranoid about my teeth. So here we go. All right. So I've really had something on my mind lately. A couple years ago in the news, a couple Nazis got caught. They bought some old dental equipment in like a box truck or a van or something. And they were doing like x-rays from inside the truck, like aiming it at cars while they're in traffic. And they were targeting like Jewish guys because they're Nazis, whatever. And I think they were successfully doing it for a little while, a couple days at least, like a couple of runs, you know. They did it a few times. Their plan was to like target the same guy over and over and over for like a month or something, and it would actually probably have caused some problems, but they caught him somehow. They caught him. But ever since then, I've been really paranoid every day, every single time I'm in traffic and I see like a box truck or a big van or a rickety old looking tractor trailer. Every time I see one, I'm like, man, I hope there's not some Nazis in there with an x-ray machine, because they did it, it happened. It's not theoretical, it wasn't a plan, it was a successful attack that, they were doing. I think what I kind of want to do is like research a little bit more to see if there's been any similar, if people have done it, if there's been any similar reports. Like I know that there was that guy and his nephew in Washington, D.C. that were shooting people. Like the nephew was laying in the back seat or whatever, and they were shooting people from the trunk of the car. And they caught them too. I think Malvo might have been his name or something. Lee Malvo or something. But like seriously, every time I'm in traffic, especially like if I'm beside a tractor trailer or behind a box truck or something, I'll speed up just to get away from them, or I'll slow way down and let them go away, or whatever, whichever seems best. I don't know. I think about that. I mean, I'm worried about it. It's something I keep an eye out for. Another thing I think about, it's like I had this like phrase or quote, not quote, just something I thought one time was, like as advanced as we are, our cities are still made out of sticks and stones. Like we're still living, in buildings made out of sticks and stones. Like the like skyscrapers and stuff like that, they're made out of steel, but steel is just, iron and, metal and stuff like that. But what do I explain? I mean, what's the next step, right? Well, I think the next step would be like blimp cities and underwater cities and underground cities. Brick falls. It's going to take a lot of technology though for me to be comfortable living in any of those places, like underground, like a mile underground or something, or any amount of underground, you know. Like we really need to figure out earthquakes. Just not even earthquakes, but structural, you know, like rigidity or whatever. I don't even know how. I mean, I guess they have mines. You always hear about miners getting trapped in a mine. Plow rips. Underground seems the safest though. Like it seems ridiculous that we aren't underground more. Especially for travel. Like Elon Musk is trying to make those tubes and stuff like that from like Los Angeles to Las Vegas or something. Los Angeles to San Francisco. I saw a documentary one time. It said something like, if you were to do a tunnel straight through the core of the earth, like if you could overcome the problems involved with drilling straight through the earth, like theoretically, if you had a tunnel that went straight through the earth, it would take like something like a half an hour to go from like any two directly opposite points on the earth. And then, but it said you would shoot out the other end really fast. And then you'd shoot back through. And eventually, like you would go back and forth a bunch of times. And then eventually, you would be stuck in the middle. But I'm sure they could figure out a way to like get you out or whatever. Like if you wanted to go from one end to the other, there'd be some sort of like an exit procedure. It would be a quick way to travel, like any two places on Earth. And that's what they said, is they said you could really do this like with a tunnel through like any two places on Earth. Like if you drew a tunnel from Los Angeles to New York through the Earth, like a straight tunnel through the Earth from Los Angeles to New York, you wouldn't dig like straight down, but you would dig at like enough of an angle that there would still be gravity pulling you. And the really cool thing was that it still takes a half an hour from like any 2 points on the earth. Like if I had a tunnel like straight down, the gravity would pull me so fast that it would take a half an hour to get to the other side of the earth. But if I drew a tunnel at like, you know, more of an angle, push-ups. Ah, 95. Ah, I did bench this morning and dips. So, no new record for push-ups today. 105 yesterday, 95 today. Tomorrow should be a good 100 again. This. But yeah, if you draw a straight line through any 2 points in the earth, supposedly it'll take a half an hour because of the earth's gravity, some calculation. It'll take the exact same amount of time to get from one point to the other point. If the angle is straight down or any variation, thereof, or whatever, half an hour. Like Chicago to Miami, or, Philly to London. There's this crazy fucking thing. Stonehenge in England, there is a straight line. If you go on Google Earth, you can do this. And type in like Stonehenge to like Philly, or Stonehenge into Washington, D.C., something like that. There's a straight line over the earth, like that hits Stonehenge, and then it hits Boston, New York City, Philly, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and it's a straight line. And honestly, I've played with the line a little bit more, and there's a couple other cities that are pretty adjacent to the line, pretty close, like I think it's Richmond, Virginia, all the way down to like Mexico City. They're all like, the first ones that I mentioned down to Washington, D.C. from Stonehenge, they're like dead on the line. But like all the way down to Mexico City, there's a couple more major cities, like old school cities, on that line. And I first learned about it on Ancient Aliens. That doesn't make it untrue. It is true. But I mean, they get a little crazy with it. But it is a little crazy. But what the hell is that? Like, why would they be in alignment? Like, it seems pretty clear that they're in alignment, and an intentional alignment. Like, what did Stonehenge even mean to the people who founded these cities? Like Boston. I don't know how old Boston is, but it's got to be like, the Boston Tea Party happened in 1775 or something, like before 1776. And Philly's been there a pretty long time too. So these cities are old cities, like maybe 300-400 years old cities. So it was before like George Washington, because I think they might have, the Ancient Aliens, they might have been trying to tie it to George Washington and the Freemasons. It's like, George Washington wasn't even around when they founded these cities. So somebody even before him put them in alignment. But for them to do that, for them to put these things in alignment and then not give us an explanation, it's like, well, what we think people are going to do. I guess they didn't know people were going to have satellites and be able to really align things like that. Maybe they thought it would be like a secret knowledge that they could play with. Maybe it was just like a secret thing, a fun little secret they thought they were doing. Sometimes you want to think things are all crazy, but people are goofy. People like to just have silly little secrets sometimes. Like the thing with computer chips. They, a lot of computer chips are made by like goofy college dudes, or when dudes that went to college and smoked a lot of pot and stuff like that, and now they're computer hardware programmers and stuff like whatever, and they draw little tiny microscopic pictures because they can, with the same tools that it takes to like draw circuitry on like microchips or whatever. You can also draw a stupid little picture. So they draw stupid little pictures on calculator processing chips and stuff, and just all of our electronics. Doesn't really, not like it's costing a lot of money or something to do. It's just a little inside joke. So like maybe the Stonehenge alignment is like an inside joke. 20 seconds. Maybe it's just like an inside joke that I never thought would even really get out. But, I mean, the real question is, what did Stonehenge mean to them? Like, let's, you know, the meaning of Stonehenge is probably pretty tough to ascertain, but what did Stonehenge mean? You know, maybe we could figure out what Stonehenge meant to the guys who founded Baltimore, Boston, New York, Philly. What I need to do is look into exactly what year all those cities were founded. Had to be in like the 1600s, maybe 1700s, you know, from all. And what was the city in Virginia where the whole city, like, mysteriously, was it Richmond? Like, they had a settlement there and then it just vanished. And like their settlement was still there, but they were just gone. Probably got like taken by Indians or something. Maybe fucking something supernatural. You know, like the Bermuda Triangle. There's been some strange things that have happened there. Like Columbus said that he saw some seaweed, and then he saw like some strange lights. And then there was that plane thing out of North Carolina in like the 1940s where planes went out and they never came back, or some strange. One guy said that he saw that he went through like a time warp tunnel or something. And supernatural things probably exist. I mean, there's been enough accounts. I wouldn't even call them supernatural, just, you know, things that we don't understand yet. But, you know, ancient alien people would say like that there's an underground alien base there or something, or some sort of a portal. Some people think that the Earth is hollow in the center and you can enter into it from the North Pole and from like the Bermuda Triangle, are like two entry points into the hollow Earth. That's a fun one. They say that it would still have like a blue sky because, you know, like our sky, well, planes fly like 40 miles up, and by the time you get to like 100 miles up or something like that, if you're like 100 miles up and you look up, you see the same starry night sky or something. But because of like all the stuff in the atmosphere, you know, at our, you know, within like anything under 40, 60 miles or something like that, you get this blue sky because of the atmosphere. Well, the Earth is thousands of miles thick. So if there was like a hollow area at any place in the Earth with the opportunity to have a ceiling, you know, 40, 60 miles above ground level, then maybe you could have a blue sky of some sort still. you would need a source of light. And I think that these people will have an explanation for that too. But I forget what it is. It's pretty unlikely, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. The Earth, I mean, maybe it's not hollow completely, but there may be, you know, an area inside the Earth where you've got 60 miles of a hollow area. People could certainly live there. But I think everything below the mantle is really mushy. Because I argue with these scientists online sometimes. In this one forum for scientists, I get into arguments with them. And I said, what if there was like a quasar that blasted a beam? You know, if the Earth got really close to like a quasar beam, you know, are there any circumstances where that could slice the Earth in two? We have two like halves of the Earth. They said maybe, you know, but squats. Better not forget those. But the scientists said more than likely with a beam, if you found something with enough energy to cut through the Earth, it would probably just blast it into, it would disintegrate the whole structure instead of just cutting. See. I think that's 100. I think it's 101. Shit. Oh, it's either 101 or 91. I think it was 101. Oh. I think that was 101. It might have been 91. Plank. So the scientists told me that if you had a beam of light with enough energy, they produced a whole fucking calculation or equation or whatever specifically for the amount of energy required to cut through a planet, or to cut through an object of some sort, like a laser. Maybe it was a laser equation. But they said that you would need to focus it somehow. So I was like, well, there's planets made out of diamonds. They've found a couple planets that are mostly like carbon, compressed carbon or something. They're sort of like diamonds. And then there's also water planets with stuff like hydrogen-8 or something on it, where it's like a liquid. It's water ice that's like not frozen, but it's so compressed that it forms ice anyway, even though it's not frozen. There's all kinds of crazy shit. So I was like, so what if one of these types of planets that could provide some sort of a lensing effect passed in front of a quasar and focused the beam and aimed it at a planet like Earth? It's like, in that scenario, could it slice the Earth in two halves? And they're like, well, it would just blast apart the diamond planet or the water planet or whatever. I was like, well, I don't know how that works, but let's say that it doesn't blast apart that planet, and we figured out a way to focus the beam from a quasar. Let's say we just figured out a fucking way to do it, you know? So if we can focus the beam, we'll cut through the planet. And I said, okay, you know, yes, you could probably cut through the planet, but like, even if you did cut through the planet, like, pretty much the only solid part of a planet is the crust. And then underneath the crust, it's like oatmeal. So they said, like, as soon as you cut it in half, gravity will just pull the two halves into a blob again. So you wouldn't have two, like, half Earths floating around. It would just be two smaller Earths. Eventually, there would be a lot of, I mean, it would destroy everything. But they tried to make me, well, they say, they didn't say this, but another documentary said that if the Earth was an apple, you know, then the crust of the Earth is like thinner than the skin of an apple, or something like that. And that's the only part of the Earth that's solid. The rest is like mushy stuff. And apparently, like, the only metal, see, this is something that I discovered recently. It's really bummed me out. But the only metal, the highest temperature that any metal that we know of can withstand is like 3,000 degrees or something. Other than that, it just melts. Like, you know, Russia landed something on Venus 40, 50 years ago or something. And it's like 700 degrees on Venus because of the runaway greenhouse effect or something. But they landed something on Venus and they knew it was going to fucking melt. So they did the best they could at putting metal, you know, there to withstand heat and protect their instruments and stuff. And they like built a refrigerator. Basically, they landed a refrigerator on Venus. And they knew that it was only going to last. They figured out it's only going to last for half an hour. So they got all the, there's a picture of it and, you know, readings. They got everything they could in that half an hour. And then they, you know, they sent it back, they emailed it back or whatever. And then it melted, like, into the ground. But the best we can do is like 3,000 degrees for metal. Now there's something weird about ceramics that can take a little bit more, but not enough. Like, not enough. It's like the universe has a lot of really hot places in it that we'll never even be able to get close to, like the core of the Earth. We'll never even be able to get close to it. Like, I was talking about digging a hole straight through the Earth. You'll never be able to, because it's so hot and we don't have anything to withstand the heat. So that, like, makes me think about, like, all life and everything that we know. Like, it's all lucky to be here, because like, this is just the right temperature for anything to happen. They talk about like they're discovering all these planets and they're looking for them in the Goldilocks zone. That's basically where it's like 70 degrees, like where it could be like 70 degrees, something like that. Although they think that there's life in Venus's atmosphere now. And that's what I was talking about before. We should be building cities in the sky. Like if there's life in Venus's atmosphere, like our atmosphere has a ton of like carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, right? A shitload of carbon dioxide, a shitload of all sorts of metals and stuff in the atmosphere, just in lower densities. But, you know, they're there. So if you could somehow extract them, like if you know, microscopic life, tiny life or something, you know, get smart. It starts extracting and gathering like carbon and heavy metals and stuff out of the atmosphere. You could build some stuff. Maybe like don't have to think about it on like human-sized people like floating around in the sky trying to build stuff out of carbon capture. But think about like little tiny, it doesn't even have to be bacteria, but like smaller than bees, you know, or even bees, I don't know. Like use your imagination a little bit and you could see how some life that lives in the atmosphere of Venus could start building some stuff and have little floating cities up there made out of like carbon, because carbon's like super strong. Carbon bonds are stronger than metal bonds because carbon has so many, it's something like, I forget what it's called from chemistry class, but carbon has like the most connector spots or whatever, which makes it really strong. We didn't even get to talk about like blimp cities and underwater cities. I think we should definitely have underwater cities. Like, all these cities are going to go underwater, like Miami and stuff, right? Well, let's just waterproof the buildings and keep it rolling. Like everybody gets around by boat, and you know the skyscrapers and stuff that are there can stay there. Mountain climbers. One minute. $45, halfway. $30. $10. All right.